It can be disruptive, and there's a few things to take note of. One is that the virus does spread very easily, this particular variant, and that's why things like targeted lockdowns may not work. You might have wider spread lockdowns, so that's one reason. The second is that this is coming in the winter in the Northern Hemisphere when people tend to be indoors, so that's another risk again. But the third, an important one from a macro perspective, is that when you had the Delta variant and when you had previous waves of the COVID virus surging, you had a policy environment that was very accommodative. We're now going to a policy environment where the accommodation and the policy support is actually being rolled back, and you have this variant coming in. So if it does pose a brake on economic activity, it might actually amplify the effect without that supportive policy environment.
You read my mind on that one. And so what do you expect policymakers to do in this? I mean, it's a conundrum, right?
It is a conundrum. And, I'll just start off with sort of a major central bank that announced last week that it was actually going to accelerate its policy measures, and that's the U.S. Federal Reserve. They had been for a long time been patient and said, we will wait for inflation to be slightly above target for an extended period for full employment to be reached before we roll back monetary policy support. But what we've heard last week is that the taper, which had already been announced, will be accelerated. And then the rate hikes, even, there's the dot plot suggests that there may be as many as 3 rate hikes next year. But our view, that's Moody's view, is that all of this is really data dependent. And what we're watching is, will Omicron have as much of an impact on supply as it does on demand this time around? The last few waves, they had much more of an impact on supply. So they sort of constrained supply, but demand continued to be quite strong because of policy support. If that's not the case this time around, then I think the Fed will start worrying a little bit more about growth again instead of inflation, which is quite rightly